Hello everyone, I'm Tiffany. I'm back again with a video. I don't know what it is. I have tried to record this video. Will be my fourth time trying to record this video. I mean, when I say that there is so many distractions, The Lord wants me to get on here and talk about my life. Tell you a little bit about my life story. And I mean, Satan just does not. He must don't want me to tell this story because this must gonna help some people, and I cannot get this story out. This will be my fourth time, so here I go again. But I'm here to tell a story about my life. The Lord wants me to talk about my life, so here I am. I'm going to get straight to the point because, like I said, this would be my fourth time trying to record this. And this is definitely going to be in parts. So here we are with story time of my life, part 1. Now, I come from two teenage parents. I was born to teenage parents, 15, 16. Okay, my mom and dad. I was born to teenage parents. I don't remember my dad being around much. I know my mom and my dad got married. They got married at a young age. They were married, and so it was me and my sister that was in the home. Like I said, I don't remember my dad being around much. I know my dad went to the Air Force, so when he would come back home, him and my mom would fight. They would fight. They would argue. They didn't get along. So that's what I remember of my childhood with my mom and dad. I don't remember them living together long. My dad had a kid, so that kind of, him and my mom separated. My dad would mess around and he would cheat and he would mess around. And from stories I heard, they said my mom did too. I don't know. They were young. They ain't had no business married, no way, and having kids. We all know how that goes. But that's a little bit background of my parents. I would be at my grandmother's a lot because I was born to a young mother. I would be at my grandmother's a lot because my mom would just be out and about, in the streets with her friends, things like that. I mean, we would be at home, but when we weren't, my mom was at my grandma's a lot too. So when it was time for her to, go out, hang out, things like that, she would drop us off at my grandma's house. That's where I was. And not only that, that's where I wanted to be. That's where I feel comfortable at. That's where I feel safe at, was at my grandma's. We all know you have that grandma in your life that's been there, or that picks up the slack. That's where you feel more comfortable at. So that's where I was at majority of the time. And not only that, my grandma's the one that instilled church in us. I do come from a church background. My grandma instilled that in all of the kids, all of the grandkids, her kids. She instilled church into us. I come from a Baptist background. That's how I was raised. I was raised in Baptist church. I was always doing things in the church, from speeches to plays to welcome speeches, sunbeams. I don't know if anybody remember that, but in the Baptist church, I remember like I was in sunbeams, red circle, I was an usher. I mean, anything that was going on in church, I was in it. Choir, we was always in the church. We'd be in the church every day, seems like. If it wasn't for practice, we was at church. If it wasn't morning church, we was in afternoon church. We was always at church, and we was always doing something in church. And so yeah, I was just always at my grandma's house. And then when I would go back home to my mom's house, I just didn't want to be there because it would be so much going on. My mom ended up getting on drugs. There was always men around, people was always around, and somehow in the midst of all that, my mom got hooked on drugs. And so the house would just be chaotic, and I at an early age, I always knew that I couldn't be around things like that. I couldn't be around things that weren't right. I couldn't be around chaos. I couldn't be around darkness. It just didn't sit right in my spirit. So like I said, my grandma was the one that always had us in church or had we went to church. So that's where I would be, because that's where my spirit felt safe. You know, I didn't, all that wasn't going on over there. And so, yeah, my mom ended up on drugs. So, you know, I was born in the 80s. So that's an indication of my age. And I was born at the time, you know, with the crack epidemic where it hit. So I experienced that life of that crack epidemic. My mom was one of the people that was during those times where she got hooked on drugs, and the men that would come in and out her life, they were selling drugs, and that's just the life that I lived in. So it was always something going on in the house. She was never, they weren't, she wasn't there. Her guy, whoever she would be with at the time, they wouldn't be there. We would be there to fend for ourselves. And so there came a time where I had to take care of my siblings, or shall I say, we took care of each other. I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. I'm the oldest of 5, and I always had to look out and take care of my siblings. I had to take care of them. I was mom. I'm mom to my siblings. My mom would go on binges, and she would be gone for days at a time. And so us kids would be at home, and I would have to take care of them. And I said, I'm no saint. You know, we would go steal. We would have to go to the stores and steal food and things like that just so I could cook it and we could eat it. You know what I'm saying? We were stealing food to eat because my mom would be gone for days at a time. And I thank God for a grandmother that was in the church and had a relationship with the Lord, because that discernment would kick in. And because back then there was, you know, we didn't have no cell phones, and there was not a phone. We didn't have a phone at my mom's house, so I couldn't pick up the phone, call my grandma, and tell her to come pick us up. We would just be there and have to wait it out. And so that discernment would kick in on my grandma, and she'd get the thing and be like, let me go over here and check on my babies. And she would come over and check on us, and sure enough, we've been there and been at the house by ourselves for a few days. And so she would load us up and come take us to her house, and we would be there. And my mom, you know, she would come on and be like, oh, well, mom came and got him. And so she would come to the house, and to my grandma's house, and come get us, because she knew that my grandma had came and got us. And this would just be a constant cycle. This was just an ongoing cycle, constant. And you know, anybody who's ever had a parent that's been on drugs, it just begins to decline. I mean, they can kind of keep up appearances and keep things going for a little bit, but over time it just begins to decline. And so things started to just decline more and more. And it got to where I was like, you know what, I can't. I made the decision at my young age. I made the decision to tell my mom that I want to go live with my grandma. I don't want to live here anymore, because like I said, that's where I felt safe. That's where I wanted to be. So I told my mom I want to go live with my grandma. I told my grandma, like, I want to come live with you. My grandma was like, hey, what did your mom say? She said, yeah. So I went and moved in with my grandma. I moved in and I lived with my grandma. Of course, I worried about my siblings and things like that, because I took care of them. But people don't understand that kids, they get stressed too. Kids get tired too. I'm dealing with all this stuff when I'm 7 and 8 years old. My dad is nowhere. He's not doing nothing. He's nowhere around. You know what I'm saying? I mean, sometimes we would go on the weekends and spend a night with him, but I mean, my dad ended up getting hooked on drugs too. So he wasn't in the picture. You know, there wasn't anything that he was doing. And so, like I said, kids, they get stressed. They get tired too. And I got tired. I got stressed. I had an ulcer when I was little, because I would worry so much about my mom and where was she at, and would she be laying somewhere dead, or my siblings, and just constant. It was constant worry. It was every day, all day. I was just constantly worrying and constantly stressing, and I couldn't do it anymore. And so I wanted to go live with my grandma. Yes, I loved my siblings and I worried about them, but I couldn't at at 7 and 8 years old, I had to make the decision that I cannot stay here because this is too much. So I left. And of course I would come back and visit. I would come and visit and things like that, but I just couldn't live there anymore. If you see me looking down, I got notes. I have an outline. And so yeah, that's some of that. I'm sorry. It's a lot, so bear with me. But yeah, that's some of my background, where I come from and things like that. It's hard to talk about because now we're about to start getting into some stuff, some deep stuff. I'm sorry, I'm outside, so it's kind of hot, but we're about to start getting into some deep things. So, okay, so I said I went and live with my grandma. Okay, so there's a time where I'm living at my grandma. Things is all good, it's fine. See, I moved in with my grandma when I was in kindergarten. So, like I said, I was about that young age, about 7 or so. I moved there to escape, to escape what my mom had going on in her home, So things is good. Things is going all right for a time and things like that. But mind you, my siblings, they still are coming over every now and again. Like I said, my grandma would get the inkling, that discern, be like, let me go check on them. And she still would do that. And I would go with her sometime. And same thing, load them up, bring them over here. That would be the time where I'm taking care of my siblings. I still was taking care of them when things like that would transpire. They would come over, and I still would, I start working with my grandma. Like, okay, we're gonna give them a bath. Let me do their hair. I did their hair, gave them baths. Like I said, it's like I'm mom to my siblings, so that mom role never left. So I still played mom when they came over. My grandma would go get them and bring them over, and we took care of them and things. And then so, of course, like I said, when I told you, when they're on drugs and things like that happen, things decline. So, she would come over there and she would pick them up, and I think my grandma was getting tired of it too, and they would just get into just fights and yelling and arguing and things like that because she's leaving her kids, and you're leaving these kids, and you're being gone for days at a time, and you're coming in here and you're lying to me, and you on that stuff, you're lying, and what people who live that life do. They lie, they cheat, they steal, so my grandma was getting tired of that. And so, like I said, I still would worry. Even though I was at my grandma's house, I still would worry. It was still my mom. I loved her. I still worried about her all the time. So, yeah, that kept going on for a long time. It kept going on for a long time. And then there came a time where my mom, where she, I'm skipping over quite a bit here, but because like I said, there's a lot, but I'm getting to the points that's important. There came a time where my mom was, see, I'm going to skip ahead to I was probably about the age of 11 or 12. I'm going to skip up to 11 or 12. And, well, actually, no, I'm going to go back a bit because, some of this might play into, somebody might need to hear it. But yeah, when I was young, also, being at my grandma's house and being with my mom and stuff, we had I don't know how I can tie this in, but I dealt with being, like I said, sometimes my mom would be at my grandma's house. Like I said, she would be there and go there. This is before she fully, started declining. Sometimes we'd be at my grandma's house and be over there, and we'd be laying on my grandma's bed watching TV and things like that. And I don't know if anybody had this in their family, but we sure did. That I would be laying with my mom sometime, and she had an uncle who was my grandma's brother. And remember I said I would always like to be at my grandma's house because that's where I felt safe and that's where I felt fine and everything felt good. And remember I said that lasted for a time. Okay, well then the time that first time outside of the chaos I deal with my mom and stuff like that, I felt unsafe. My grandma had, a brother. He would come around. And I remember this so vividly. I remember I was laying on the bed with my mom and we were watching TV. And I was just laying there with my mom, chilling with my mom. I think I could have probably been about 6 or something like that. I don't know. But I was laying there with my mom and I was just relaxing with my mom and we're just laying there. And then my uncle comes in there. And, he just kind of lays across the bed and he's coming in there talking to my mom and just talking. And I'm just laying here, I'm just minding my business. My mom was looking at stories. So I was sitting up here looking at stories with her. I would be into stories, okay? I'm laying up here with my mom, we looking at stories. And here he comes. And then that's the first time I remember. My mom was laying right there and she didn't even notice. But this man sat here and he put his hands under the covers. And I don't know if I can say these words on here or anything like that, but that's when I was messed with. And of course I jumped back, but my mom didn't even notice. She didn't even notice. She didn't even know what was going on. She didn't even recognize it. And I didn't say anything because as a child, I was quiet. I was one of those quiet kids. And so I didn't say anything, but that was the first time that something like that happened to me. I had that uncle, and he put his hands under the covers and he touched me where he wasn't supposed to. And so yeah, of course I jumped back, and that happened that one time. And I don't know. I know it had an effect on me, but at the time, I think that was something that I kind of had pushed back to my mind, and I never told anybody, and I never talked about it. I never told anyone. And so I'm telling you this because the Lord brought it to my memory to tell that. I don't know if somebody needed to hear that, but I was going to skip over that, but it's going to tie into my story. So yeah, and so yeah, so that happened at my grandma's house. When I was there with my mom. But yeah, that's just one of the many things that happened why I was, when I was young and I was coming up, added to dealing with the mother that was on drugs and that chaos and dealing with that. I didn't, one thing I can say was when I was living with my mom and I was at her house, all the men and stuff she had there and she had coming in and out of the house, not once never experienced a man at her house do that to me. But it happened at my grandma's house from a family member. Ain't that crazy? The place that you expect something like that to happen, it didn't happen. But the place you wouldn't expect it to happen, it happened, and it happened from a family member. I don't know why I said that, but it's just crazy. The place where I was supposed to feel calm, or I was supposed to feel at peace, that I was supposed to feel okay, that happened there. So fast forward to when I as I got older. Sometimes all of us cousins, we would be at my grandma's house and we would be there and we would all get together. You know how you get together with family, with cousins, and the aunts and stuff would come over, and my grandma, her sister would come over and bring her grandkids, and we all would just be there and we'd just be hanging out sometime. And like I said, we would be in church. So sometimes my grandma always had little groups. We always had little groups that she would start with us. It would probably be like little dance groups or something like that. And she would just we would go around to different places and perform. So we could be there and we would probably be practicing or something like that, or just hanging out, the cousins. And here come that creepy uncle. Here he comes. And it's crazy how all of these adults could be in the house, but they don't see it's like right in front of their face, but they don't see that this is happening. That all the cousins, they would see him, and he would just come in a room where we would be at and just start chasing us or grabbing us and picking us up. But he would always pick us up and grab us, and that would what he would that would be the time that he would use to touch us in places that he shouldn't. He would always use picking us up and playing with us as a time to touch us in places where he shouldn't. And then you see all of us cousins, us girl cousins, we're all running around and we're laughing, but you could tell that we didn't like it. We were running, we were laughing, we was trying to get away from him. But he would just follow us. And the adults there, this is happening. They're not paying attention. They're not looking at seeing what's going on, but the cousins is happening to us. And sometimes all of us would get together and we would tell stories. We would compare stories. And each and every one's be like, yeah, he did that to me. Yeah, he did that to me. He did that to me too. We would get together sometimes and just, I don't know how we would start talking about it, but we would compare stories. So I don't know, but a lot of families got that creepy uncle that is doing that to the kids, and they wonder why, the kids run when he comes around, or they don't want to be in the same room. Or watch your kids, okay? Pay attention to your kids. Watch the people that are coming around your kids, because sometimes it's not always a stranger. Sometimes it is a family member that is doing stuff, and they're doing stuff right in your face. Pay attention to your kids. That's why when my daughter was young, I did not allow her to be around men and playing and stuff like that, because they will do stuff and put it off as they're playing with the kids and stuff like that. Or they got them sitting on their lap and they're acting like they're just being nice, and the whole time they're doing something to that child in front of your face. So pay attention and watch your kids, because these snakes will do stuff right in front of your face. I don't know who needed to hear that, but I needed to say it. Watch your kids, okay, around everyone. But excuse me, like I said, I'm outside, it's hot. But yeah, I had to get that out, and because a lot of stuff happens right up under in the house and from family members, and it's going on with these kids, and not everybody kids is going to share or is going to tell. I didn't tell. My cousins didn't tell. We kept that stuff to ourselves. So yeah, so fast forward, see, let's move up to 12 or so. Let's get there. I'm about to bear with me. But yeah, I'm gonna move up to I'm about 12, and so yeah, back to my mom and me being 12, and I'm not living with my mom, mind you. I'm still with my grandma. And so I go over to my mom. My mom there's this new guy that she's with, and as all the other ones, I don't like him. He gives me excuse me, you guys, it's hot out here, so I'm probably gonna wrap this up in a minute, this story, and I will be back for part 2. But excuse me. But this guy, and I just don't like him. There's just something about him. I'm looking at him like, yeah, I didn't like the others, but I really don't like you. Like, I'm discerning him, and you could just look at him and you could just tell, like, something is off about him. Something is evil about this man. I don't know what it is. It just is. Like, he carries this presence, this dark presence about him. And my mom is on drugs, so I don't know. But this is one of the times I go over and I go visit her at her house, and she's living with this guy. And I'm going to visit because, like I said, I felt like I was mom. I had to look out for my siblings. I'm worried about my mom. I want to go see my mom. I'm going to look out for her too. Like, what you got going on over here? So, of course, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to visit her. I want to see what's going on with her. And just this whole time, this guy just does not seem right to me. the environment that she's living in, it just doesn't seem right to me. So when she gets with this guy, I'm sitting here thinking, like, yeah, we were used to my mom being gone for days at a time. But when she gets with this guy, my mom could be gone for like up to 2 weeks at a time. And they would come back and he would come back with her talking about they was out of town. They would be traveling out of town and stuff like this. And so she would be gone for up to 2 weeks at a time. So my siblings would be at my grandma's house with us for like up to 2 weeks at a time. And I told you, like I said, this is the stuff that would worry me, with the ulcer and stuff I had. And so back to when I said that I will always fear and get this fear and be scared that is my mom going to end up dead, laying dead somewhere. That's just always the fear that I would have. And then so there came one night, we're all in the bed, we're asleep and stuff like that. And, my grandma she hears this knock at the door, and it's like 2, 3 in the morning. Like, who's knocking on the door? She hears this knock at the door, and no, she gets the call first. No, she gets this call. And then I could just hear her yelling, like, what? What's going on? And I'm in the room. I don't know what's going on. I just hear a bunch of yelling. And then she gets this information about my mom being in the hospital. And we're like, okay, why is she in the hospital? I'm eavesdropping, so I'm not getting the full gist of what's going on. I'm just hearing bits and pieces. And then the guy that she was with, like I said, she was living with, this is her boyfriend, the one that gave me the creeps, that was like dang near my grandma's them age. He knocks on the door, and he comes and tells my grandma them that, hey, oh no, what he did, he dropped my siblings off, because my sibling, my two, like I said, there's 5 of us, right? So I was living with my grandma, and I think, yeah, me and my sister both, we were living with my grandma. And then there's the 2 middle kids. They was living with my mom. So they stayed living with my mom. And then I had a youngest sibling, my little sister, and she has we all have different dads. So she was with her dad. She was living with her dad. She wasn't living, she was visiting her dad at the time, so she wasn't here. My youngest sibling, she wasn't here. She was with her dad and their people out of town in Kansas City. And so my 2 younger siblings, the other 2, they were there. And then me and my sister, we was at my grandma's house. We was staying there. And so he came and dropped off our 2 younger siblings. He came and dropped them off. He was bringing them, and he said, hey, here's the kids. And talk about my mom, he hurried up, dropped them off, and left. But by the time my grandma had already got the call that my mom was in the hospital, and what had happened to my mom is that she had been set on fire. She had been set on fire, and she was dropped off at the hospital and left there in the emergency. She was dropped off and she was left there. And then this guy came and he dropped my siblings off and left. Didn't see him again. And so come to find out, my mom's cousin was with her that night. And she said that my mom kept telling her, don't leave me, because they had been out all night or whatever. And the cousin, my cousin too, and she was like, well, no, I got to go back home. You go back home, you go home. I'm not staying with you, I'm leaving. She left her. She told her not to leave her, but she left her. So my mom went to face the music. And the man beat her. He threw Vaseline on her and he set her on fire. And he put her out, of course, and he went and dropped her off the hospital, and he left, and he went on the run after that. But my mom was burned. The only thing that didn't burn my mom, that the fire didn't get, was her face. She didn't get burned from here. But my mom was burned from here all the way down. Her feet didn't get burned, and her face didn't get burned. Everything else was burned. And my mom was in the burn unit. She stayed in the burn unit for about a year or so. So that was a very traumatic experience in my life at that age. The guy, he was on the run. I think they didn't catch him for like 6 months. He was on the run for like 6 months, and then they finally caught him. And how they caught him is because he was wanted in another state for doing that to another woman, but she died. So he was wanted in another state for doing that to another woman, but she died. And so they caught him, and of course he went to jail and served time and all that stuff for that. But when my mom that happened, I went to visit my mom one time in that hospital, and when I seen her, she was nothing but, there was nothing but flesh. I couldn't take it. I couldn't stomach it. I couldn't be there. So I didn't go back anymore. I didn't go back to see my mom for like 6 months. And so when she was getting, my mom was knocking on death's door. She did die, but they was able to save her, and she was in critical condition for a very long time, but she survived it. I didn't go back for like 6 months, and then I finally went back, and I stayed the night down there and stuff like that. But when my mom came home, she had to come and live with my grandma. So I had to help take care of her. Me and my grandma did it, but I did most of the work because I was the one that learned how to she had to wear these compression suits because she would have to get graftings and stuff done for her burns, and she would have to wear these compression suits to keep, make sure that everything stayed intact. And so I would have to put these things on her. She would have to take baths. I had to do all that. You know what I'm saying? I had to do all that for a long time until she was able to move around and do things for herself. And it was very hard. It was a very hard, difficult childhood. I didn't have a childhood. I didn't have a normal childhood, so I kind of missed out having a childhood because I was always taking care of somebody, taking care of my siblings, taking care of my mom, just going through things, family members. And so, yeah. So on from there, it's a lot. So on from there, just a little while after that happened, I think, I probably was about 13 or so. We're going to move on to me being probably about 13. I know I was in middle school. I was getting older and things like that. So I was like 13, and excuse me, I'm just looking. So I was like, about 13 or so, and I was getting older, and at this stage, I'm starting to wear makeup and kind of starting to feel myself a little bit. I'm getting older. I'm experimenting with makeup. I'm putting on makeup and things like that, and I'm just, I'm a teenage girl. I'm growing up, so I'm experimenting and putting on makeup and just, I'm out here riding with my teen cousins and stuff like that. I'm out here riding with them and with my cousins, my boy cousins and stuff like that, and they driving and stuff. I was like, oh, you got a car? We just drive. I'm just drive. They driving, I'm riding and stuff. You get to be that age, you get a little bit of freedom, so you start feeling yourself. You start to want to hang out and stuff. So this is what we was doing, and I had a cousin that he was always hanging out with my other cousin. I had a male cousin that we lived together. My grandma raised him too, so we lived in the house together. We was kind of raised like siblings, so it's almost like he's like my older brother. And so when he got a car and stuff, I was like, yeah, I want to ride, like let me go. And so our other cousin would come over, male cousin, and he was always coming over to hang out with my cousin. And like I said, he got this new car, so I was like, I want to go. And so we would go and we would just hang out. And I don't know, this other cousin, he was just, I should have picked up on it then, but he was just would, just look at me in little ways or something like that. But I didn't pay it no mind. I'm too busy, being a girl and just feeling myself and just doing all that. And then so there came a night where we had went to Texas and stayed for maybe like a week or so. And this is how I tied in with that, because we had got back from Texas like maybe like a week or so later. And I remember that night I don't know what it was that night, but I don't know what it was about that night, but somehow, for some reason that night, I just felt like when I went to bed, I just felt like I wanted to just cover myself. I don't know why I did. It was probably that I look back on, it's probably it was my spirit preparing me for something that was about to happen. But I just felt like covering myself. Like I really like covered myself. Like I put on pajama pants and shirt. Like I really like covered myself that night. And I went to bed. And then later on in the night, it's probably like 2 o'clock in the morning, maybe 3. Everybody in the house is asleep. I just feel this person in my room, and I feel him doing stuff to me. And I'm like, what? I was like, what is going on? And I was like, what? And like I said before, I was a quiet person, so I was a quiet kid, so I didn't say much or do much, but I could just, I felt him doing stuff to me, and fear gripped me. It gripped me so much so that I was scared to scream. I was scared to open my mouth. I was scared to yell. I was scared to do anything but just lay there and let him do what he was doing. And then I finally said something. I finally said, telling him, like, I'm your cousin. Why are you doing this? And, he's sitting up there telling me, like, yeah, I know you're my cousin, but I like you. I really like you. Like, how can you really like me? I'm your cousin. Like, come on, man. Like, I'm your cousin. You can't really like me. You know what I'm saying? And it was another time in my childhood where I was like, I couldn't understand it. I was confused. I couldn't understand it. But one thing I do remember, it was difficult for him, because I remember I said something in me told me to just cover myself completely that night, and I did. So it made things really difficult for him, and thank God that there was, I don't know if I can say this, he couldn't go all the way, because I was too covered by the grace of God. You know what I'm saying? It was just too much. And of course, like I said, fear gripped me, so I'm just laying there stiff as a board. And I mean, he did enough, but thank God that that didn't happen. And so he left. After I said what I needed to say, he left and all that. And that was one time I couldn't be quiet. I couldn't keep quiet. And I was scared, and I was young. When you're young, you don't know. I'm thinking, like, what if he gave me something or something like that? But mind you, it didn't go that far. But in my young mind, I don't know. I'm young. I don't know nothing about that stuff. So I'm scared, and I'm like, I got to go tell my grandma. I have to tell her what happened last night, because I can't, like, what if anything, And so I tell her this is what happened. And then she flipped out, and she's like, how did he get in here? Why was he even here? We're all asleep. And then my other cousin was like, well, he came and asked if he could stay. I let him in, because he asked if he could stay the night. Like, he's always here. He's always staying the night. So I let him in. I didn't think anything of it. But my other cousin did say, like, I do remember letting him in, though. He did come in here. And then, he left a little while later, I guess. Everybody was asleep. Nobody was paying attention. Everybody was just used to him always coming and being over there. And so, of course, we went through, that. And my grandma called her sister, because that's her grandchild. So she called and told her. And then, this was what makes it hard for people to tell or tell you the truth, because after that, that whole side of the family came against me. That whole side of the family called me a liar. That whole side of the family said that they both was probably doing stuff, and I was probably doing stuff too, and I got scared and all this and that, which is probably why I went ahead and told and all this and that. No, they turned against. When I say they turned against me, and I was every liar in the book. My cousin, he has a sister, and I would hang out with her and be around her and stuff. And we went to the same school and things like that. Just a minute, my grandson is here, so he's playing and being loud. So I'm probably gonna cut this short and come back for part 2. So stay tuned. We're 40 minutes in anyway, and I'm going to go ahead and come back for part 2, because like I said, now we're probably starting to get into the meat of things. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to put a pin here, and we'll come back for part 2. Okay? Because we're 40 minutes in anyway. So stay tuned. Story time will continue, and I will be back for part 2.